graduated in the spring of 2017 from Texas State University with my bachelor's degree in geography and a certificate in GIS. And that was a very interesting time of my life, to say the least. While it wasn't quite as rough, I'd say, as, say, for instance, the high school or middle school years for a person like me, Texas State University, nevertheless, was very much a university that seemed to cultivate and cater a lot more to the party college side of things. And so as a result, less than one semester in, and I was already exasperated with the antics of many of my peers, including some of my roommates during those semesters. Well, I tried to be as nice as I could and stay focused on my grades and all that. I didn't mince my words when I expressed my irritation at many of my fellow students on my weekly Skype chats with my mother. But at the time, I never would have imagined that just a few months after graduation, I would have actually gotten a job up in Colorado, of all places. I have many fond memories from there as well, but one of the biggest was actually spending Thanksgiving with my mom and Steven in a woodland cabin. She actually rented a cabin for myself because I generally like to sleep on my own in that kind of situation. But they were really cool cabins, and I was really glad that I got to spend the time there with my mom and Steven at Thanksgiving, since usually in the past, Thanksgiving has traditionally been something I usually do with my abuela, Uncle Frank, and my dad. So here I got a few pictures that I saved for you on about what those cabins look like, so you can see for yourself. But the irony of the situation was, at the time of that Thanksgiving, I had no idea that all was not well with my father in San Antonio. It was just before that Thanksgiving that my dad had an injury falling at his apartment in San Antonio, and a little while after he went to the hospital, they discovered that due to his diabetes and issues he had been having he had been on dialysis at that time, and because of that and his complications with diabetes, they soon saw that the skin on his legs around the injury was turning black, which meant that it was gangrene and that his leg would have to be amputated. And that was just too much for my dad to handle. As my abuelo later told me, that after that night, he ended up taking all the pills within his reach to try to kill himself, basically. And she found that out because my dad had been transferred to the psychiatric sector of his hospital that weekend, Thanksgiving, and when she came in, he said, "Mom, I did it again. I'm so sorry." because he had tried to kill himself before that in 2014 when the same kinds of issues with the stress of having to do his dialysis at home and getting his leg injured earlier as well, falling on the stairs at one point, was he had tried to kill himself earlier than that, same kind of method with taking sleeping pills. But in the end, the doctors were able to talk him and give him therapy and get him into a bed and help him get into a more affordable place in San Antonio than the apartment I was living in Austin, where I filmed my Phoenix project, or part of that Phoenix project, and help him get his life together and such. And so eventually they went on and they did the amputation, but in the end, they couldn't stop the gangrene from spreading. And so just after New Year's Day 2018, I got a text from my mother saying, "Joseph, you need to come down to San Antonio immediately. Your dad is very sick." And at the time, I didn't know exactly what had happened because she had just been passing on word of mouth from my abuela. But I knew there was serious trouble from the tone of it. And so I got down there and I went to the special hospital where my dad had just been transferred to finally see him and find out what was going on. And he broke the bad news to me himself. He said, "Joseph, they've stopped my dialysis and they're not going to be able to save my life, and in a couple days I'm going to be gone. They're just keeping me on pain medicine until then so that I can be free of pain." And at that point my heart just sank. Absolutely sank. Like in my most pessimistic moments, like I knew I would have to deal with the death of a loved one eventually, but in my most pessimistic moments, I never imagined that it would be my father who would be the first major death that I'd have to deal with. And I'll always remember the feeling that those last few days, watching him slip away and saying my goodbyes and whatever came to mind, and how thankful I was. Hollywood Cemetery here in Houston. This is where my dad is buried. Paxton Andrew Frumbaugh, that was my grandfather who I never met. And this one over here is Paxton Lee Frumbaugh, my father. January 7th, 2018. Day that will forever live in my memory. So now for Thanksgiving, we're laying some more flowers on his grave there. I was here to watch the actual burial, but
He is actually buried. Okay. He's actually buried here.
Yeah.
But this is his head.
Yeah, but that's the headstone. I was back in Colorado when they buried headstone on top, but I saw them lower the box of ashes in. I remember it was, I believe, on Valentine's Day. I'm just really glad that he really wanted to go.
He wanted to go.
Because 56 is a young age to pass, if you ask me.
He
So
wanted
I'm
to
just
go
glad.
very badly, you know it.
Yeah.
He tried many times.
Yes,
He
and
got mad at you when you
I remember.
called it.
And even now, it's still hard to think about all that and my losses. But I'm trying to move on with my head held high. And I'm hoping that somewhere out there that he's freed of pain these days and in a better place. And I can't believe it's been over a year now since that day. Feels like just yesterday almost in a way. But in the meantime, I've made so much progress as an adult since then. I've choosing to move on with my head held high, like I said, and I've managed to get to replace, even though Colorado in the end didn't work out due to temporary job nature, as well as the rent being much more expensive than I thought it would be. And I applied for a couple jobs in Seattle, but those didn't work out. In the end, I managed to, just before my 30th birthday, land a job in Syracuse. And that's how I'm here right now. And so, but I felt like I have a duty. I feel like I have a duty to at least make some tribute in the form of an episode to my departed father. And so here it is. So now that I've made my obligatory tribute to my departed father as part of Project 30, now it's time, I feel, to move on to some of the stuff that I've been doing since getting in Syracuse, since getting my new job in Syracuse, that is, as well as turning 30 years old. So without further ado,